We've been talking a lot about starting a business, but sustaining and growing a business can be just as challenging. Half of new businesses survive the first 5 years, and only a third last 10 years or more. That reality is perfectly reflected right here in DC's food scene. We see restaurants come and go all the time. There are a few restaurateurs who have stood the test of time. Among them, we were just hearing about Nizam Ali and Ian Hilton. Nizam is the owner of Ben's Chili Bowl. It's an iconic family business and local landmark. It was started by his parents in 1958. I met Nizam last night, and judging just by meeting him, I assume that was long before he was born. The enterprise has just expanded, as Steve mentioned, to Reagan National Airport and beyond. Ian Hilton is known to foodies in the district as half of the Hilton brothers. Ian and his brother Eric have built an empire in Washington hotspots, including the Brixton, Shea Billy. The Hilton brothers have often been vanguards of revitalization in quickly gentrifying neighborhoods. Joining us to lead the conversation with these two gentlemen is Matt Cooper, contributing editor for Newsweek. Matt, you can take it away. I'm assuming, are our mics ready?
Hope so.
Thanks, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Great. Well, thank you so much. You know, generally a journalist tries to have at least a little bit of detachment and objectivity, but I'm such a fanboy when it comes to these two guys. I spend a lot of time and money at their dining establishments. I feel close to the two of them and my cardiologist. So it's great to talk to them in person about their business, how they've built a sense of community about their enterprises here in Washington, and what lessons that may or may not hold for other small businesses around. So, Nizam, let me start with you. You know, Ben's Chili Bowl has been such an institution in Washington for so long. 60 years now?
Almost 56 years, yeah.
Almost 56 years. You know, let me just ask you a sort of basic question. Why do you and your family think it is done so well? Is it just the food? Is it the circumstances of the neighborhood? What do you think accounts for its longevity?
I think it's a little bit of everything. It's consistency. We always heard, and I don't mean just, you know, when I say consistency, of course it's consistency of product, but it's also consistency of family. Mom and Dad started it, of course, and our family, my brothers and I and sister-in-laws are carrying it on. So it's the same business for 56 years in the same location, same food, same personalities, really, same way to treat people, and just really being that story. So 56 years in the same place takes its toll, I guess, in terms of forming that institution or that community anchor, which we try so hard to be.
Gotcha. Can you hear me now? Okay, I was just given another mic. Do you hear it now? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, Ian, talk to me about how you've, what's your approach with your brother as you've built this, incredible constellation of establishments through DC. I mean, what is your goal in terms of community, in terms of echoing the neighborhoods they're in terms of creating a new community where there was none?
Wow. My brother typically is the visionary on what neighborhood he wants to go in and remake. We're not usually the first to arrive. I think you beat us by like 50 years. We get in early, for sure. Areas that we think really are up and coming. And then we really try to cluster several businesses around one another for benefiting from economies of scale, from management and so forth. But we always want to, sort of honor what was in that part of town before we arrived, because we certainly weren't the first. And that's really how it's just kind of, come about over the years.
Right. So in terms of honor, Marvin, your flag, I guess the first and flagship, right, is that the first of your establishments?
Well, my brother opened the 18th Street Lounge when I was, 16 and drinking illegally there. So, but yeah, no, Marvin was the first that came into that really got us in kind of a rapid expansion when we really started working together. So yeah, Marvin.
And a tip of the hat to Marvin Gaye, who grew up in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean certainly. My brother's my brother's also a musician, and music's a big part of his life, and music's a big part of Marvin, the establishment. So.
Yeah. So it wasn't like you were plunking down some bar that could have worked, or would have had this. The name would not have echoed the same way if you just dropped it in Philadelphia or Toledo or Omaha.
No, would not have worked.
I mean, you're sort of.
Yeah, I mean we're from here.
Right.
I've been here 42 years, and my brother will hate me for saying he's been here for 48, and we love the city. We've watched it go through a lot of changes, but we're certainly in touch with what came before us.
Right. Absolutely. And, do you have any, I mean, if someone comes to you and they look at your, your culinary traditions and your successes and, they're interested in starting a place in a burgeoning neighborhood, what are the kinds of advice you would give them?
Don't sell food. No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, to say we have culinary traditions is really being kind. But no, I would tell them to focus very hard on the lease that you're going to get.
Yeah.
Be very careful in your build out and hire the right people that have been down this road before. The first one's hard. Derek Brown, I see over there, he could tell you. The first one is hard, and then they get easier when after you're done,
And are they easier because of your experience or because of the economies of scale that you mentioned earlier? What makes it easier as you go along? It's
the experience in dealing with the city, knowing what a good lease or purchase looks like on a piece of real estate. You learn what you can do and what you can't do, and what your neighbors like and what they don't like. Because if you're going to be a good neighbor, you've got to be listening to what the neighbors want you to do.
You make it sound like dealing with the city is not always easy.
I don't know how you're getting that feeling.
I don't know. I'm reading too much.
It's difficult the first time around.
Yeah.
That's a great question that you should ask.
Hey, don't pass the buck to me.
Because he's done work in Arlington, so he can tell you the differences between D.C. and Virginia. But it is just night and day. I'm sure it's like anything else that you would do. Your second one's going to be a lot easier, except for maybe marriage, I guess.
It's true. And what's it been like, in recent years as Ben's? For so long there was just Ben's.
Yeah.
And then Ben's next door. I don't know what the sequence was, but now you have Ben's next door. You're at the stadiums. You're at the airport. You're shooting for one at H Street. What's that experience been like?
It's been really challenging. And kind of to what Ian was saying, as the second one's easier, it's almost like this next period of growth is very difficult for us, and it's actually harder. It's really going into uncharted territories and neighborhoods that we're not used to, like going into Arlington. And it's a very different experience in a very different community. So part of our, our mission, as we're on U Street, it's always been to really tell the story of the history of U Street and kind of, be that place that honors the memory, kind of as Ian's doing with Marvin. To honor that memory and legacy of those who came before us on U Street.
Right.
And then how do you do that when you translate to a new community like Arlington, or you're in the airport or something? Because that's really kind of a core in our values, to really be a part of and be entrenched in and be that local place in whatever community we go to.
Right. No, I lived here in the 1980s. I was only 5 then. But that was a very rough time for the business, right? I mean, because not only was the city going through a terrible mess, but U Street was just completely torn up to make way for the metro. Businesses it was very hard to physically get to any business, and I remember how empty your place was. But it's just getting back to community, though. It seemed to me that as much as you needed the neighborhood needed you at that time, that there was a real sort of, that the people in the neighborhood really needed to kind of hang on to Ben's at a time when things were particularly rough. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think that's exactly right. It totally goes both ways. It's you need each other. You've got to be really respectful of the community. You've got to build those relationships within the community. You have to be there for them. Part of our thing is, say it snows 2 feet in D.C. tomorrow. You're not going to do any business, but you try to do your best to get down there and you get open because people need a place to eat. You provide a service, and then it goes both ways that when the whole street is torn up and the street is a 60-foot hole for 5 years, you need them. You need people to go and support and say, hey, I'm going to go and trek my way down this narrow, dangerous pathway to get to Ben's because we need to keep them there. And they didn't close up the doors and wait 5 years till the subway came to open back up. When the neighborhood is nice, you stick through it. So you're sticking there together with the community.
Yeah. And I'm curious from both of you, jump in here, but dealing with kind of neighborhood activists and people who are involved in the community, I think anybody who's lived in an urban neighborhood knows there, some people who are, kind of make it their full mission to worry about whether the trash can is in the right place. And some people are terrific and others are basically cranks. And I'm just curious what your experience has been like dealing with neighborhood.
Do we have an hour or two?
Yeah.
We'll take any stories you got.
Well, I think recently I've learned, and if anyone here is from Georgetown, I have nothing against people from Georgetown, but I've found out how easy to work with the neighbors are around U Street and 9th Street and Petworth. We recently opened a place in Georgetown, and I'm very proud of it, and I think the community loves it, but we got a lot of advice on how they would
color
like to
of
see
the
things.
doorknobs.
Yeah, this is an old neighborhood.
Right.
This is a neighborhood that's been, not that they're all, but these are, a lot of the residents have been there for a long time, and they very particular about how they would like to see things run. And that's been a real challenge. And I've always found myself to be very cooperative when it comes to dealing with, not just because occasionally you might have the law on your side on what you can do in terms of hours or noise, but that really isn't the point. If your neighbor doesn't like you because you play your music too loud, if you want to have a good neighbor, you better turn it down, whether you have a legal right to do so or not. So it varies by neighborhood in massive ways. The people of Petworth, on the flip side, were just so happy to have something come in to their neighborhood and rolled out the red carpet. And that's not going to be the case everywhere. So that's my perspective on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So 8th Street has been really interesting. It's a wonderful community. It's something that people were.
So this is the new place.
The new place that we're
Northeast
still trying to get
8th Street.
open. That we're hopefully will get open in another month or so. But everyone's so excited. Hey, you're going to 8th Street. You're going to 8th Street. But then between the ANCs and ABRA, the alcohol regulation in D.C., they effectively cut our liquor hours already. And this is before we even had the building built, anticipating the noise that will obviously come and disturb people's enjoyment of their homes. So without any proof, without any, we've had a great reputation in the community for 50 years. Have a liquor license on U Street that we've never had any issues with and never complaints. Right. But effectively, they've shut us down.
It's not like you're the first place selling liquor on H Street.
Correct. But yeah, they made it a point to say, hey, we're going to fight you and we're going to shut you. You have to close that rooftop at midnight because there's obviously going to be noise loud enough to affect us.
Right.
When there's not even a rooftop constructed yet, and we're doing everything to make it sound mitigating and to be good neighbors, because it's really about being.
And there is
neighbors.
a rooftop already at Rock and Roll Hotel. It's not like it's rooftop free, right?
Well, it's just it's a lot of it's a little it's challenging because obviously you want to, as Ian was saying, you want to be great neighbors. Like I want people to come to us and say, hey, this is. The noise is affecting us, as opposed to calling the council member or making some big stink about it. Just knock on the door. We're there every day. Yeah.
This panel's about community and just broadening that definition a little bit to employees, who are obviously, your lifeblood, your family. There are two things that have been in the news. I'm just curious how you think of them as entrepreneurs and restaurateurs. And one is the Affordable Care Act, how that has or hasn't affected your business, and the other is this whole question about immigration reform. How do those two things look from where you sit? And there's no one from ICE here, so I think we're okay.
Now, taking the first one, I think when pressed, the thing that I really am, very proud of every day is how many people we employ. These are not, crappy jobs. These are good jobs, at management level and on down through line level employees. They've chosen this field. It's not a field to be embarrassed about. We are starting to, bring in the requirements from the Affordable Care Act through the help of, insurance benefit brokers and so forth. And that's going to be, really, I'm going to be proud to be able to roll that in. I don't know what it's going to cost yet. And it probably will, affect our bottom line. But I agree that it's the right thing to do. In terms of immigration reform, I don't know how that will ever affect us other than, some people will be able to kind of come out of the shadows. They don't have that problem really in restaurants. Obviously we have quite a few people who may or may not be in the country legally, but they are, documented workers as far as we're concerned. I'm sure they live their lives in fear and have some anxiety that at any moment they could have a real issue. So it's certainly something that needs to be addressed in a comprehensive way.
And what are those things like for you? And I think I've noticed that the flagship place on U Street that, over years it seems like you have more immigrant labor than, of course, your dad himself is an immigrant, but it seems like there's more immigrant labor at your place.
Yeah, and it's just, it's really trying to hire, whom we can to sustain, DC residents, local, as much as possible. With the Affordable Care Act, it's, obviously, like Ian says, it's something that needs to be done. It's right to do. It's something that we're still navigating. It's something to still really see how it will affect us in a business perspective. But it is, obviously something that needs to be done, and we need to take care of our people and our employees.
Gotcha. I think it's time for some questions. So if any of you have questions for our panelists or menu suggestions.
It's one in the back.
Hi, my name's Nina. I'm with Think Local First DC. Nizam is on our board. Hi. Anacostia. So, yeah, there we go.
Go ahead, I'm always going first.
Well, in that case, in terms of the bubble, busting the bubble on restaurants, there are, it feels like a gajillion restaurants opening in DC. I think the ones that survive are going to be the ones that do it right. It's easy to say the food and the customer service, but I think the ones that will really last are the ones that are entrenched in the community and don't just come to the neighborhood to, I don't want to say leech off of it, but
Right.
You'd like to say that the ones that take a real stake in that neighborhood, the ones that contribute, donate, serve on boards, do the work that needs to be done in the city. As far as Anacostia, I can only speak individually for us, in that for us it's an operations thing, and we're picking locations is always extremely difficult, and especially with the workforce environment that we have now, and with the finding great people and attracting great people. So all those take into account. We obviously know the need in Anacostia, but it's very business, restaurant group specific as to what makes sense. But it's a great place to go, and we would love to get there at some point, and hopefully sooner than later.
On the first one, the restaurant, I think you will see a thinning of the herd over the next couple of years. You can't have, I don't know how many restaurants opened on 14th in the last couple of years, but it was
Jack Evans told me there were 74 between Thomas Circle and U Street.
yeah, and that's, I mean, it's just not sustainable. And I know a lot of those people came in, whether they're from Philadelphia, not mentioning any names, or locally, came in, they signed big money leases. They spent way too much money on their build-outs, and you can't fill those seats every night. It's not going to happen. The competition is too much.
Right.
So I think a few of them, and probably something that's a very prominent place will shut down within the next year or so. As for Anacostia, I'm wide open to really any part of the city. It's a matter of, someone really needs to approach the right person and say, hey, this is a really good spot. I think X, Y, or Z might work here, and we can make a really good deal to get you in. Absolutely would entertain that.
We got 2 minutes left, so let's get one in, maybe two if we're quick.
Hi, I'm Raj, and I'm an artist in D.C., and I had a question about Ben's. Ben's is closely tied to Bill Cosby. How do you navigate that scenario?
I was thinking of not coming because I knew that question was going to come today.
I told him I was going to ask.
He was going to ask me and get in trouble with that. It's a tight situation. I mean, it's something we haven't. I mean, obviously, I can't say off the record here, but it's one of those situations that he's been a close family friend for 50 years. He's been extremely close to our family, to our mom. Ben's would not be what it is today without him. So when you think of friendship and what that means, at what point do you abandon your friend as a friend? We're not talking about, condoning anything, and we're extremely sensitive to all that's going on. But at what point do you write your friend off? Sometimes your friend needs you the most at that point, but it doesn't take a stance on the situation. It doesn't say, hey, we believe or don't believe. It doesn't get into that realm. But it's something that is, if it's a member of your family, if it's your son or your brother, or we all know people that are, committed crimes or in jail or this or that, are they still a part of your family, or do you disown them at that point? So I think it's a question of true friendship and a question of family. And he is a part of our family. But it's extremely sensitive.
Yeah. Let's do one more. Back here, sir. Thank you.
Hi, Glenn Marcus from Johns Hopkins. Has the half smoke been designated the city's official food yet? And I have a second, more serious question. How do you do in terms of disposal of food throughout the community? I think some of us always wonder what happens to excess food. And also, what about hiring people with ex-inmates?
Oh, gotcha. So kind of a three-parter. Every time they've done a poll that I've known of, it's like the half smoke's always kind of labeled as DC's signature dish, which is awesome and a great thing. God, I'm forgetting my questions now. The second question, remind me the second question was?
What do you do with
gotcha, excess food. It's always an issue there. At one time, certain points in time, we've donated food to Martha's Table or things like that. We just try to have as little waste as humanly possible, but unfortunately, there's not a mechanism that we have at the end of the night at 2 in the morning to best deal with that. And your third was?
Inmates.
Inmates. Oh, we hire a lot of ex-offenders. We have tons of ex-offenders. Not really through any formal program, but a lot of people that apply are people needing a second chance, and we hire a ton.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Nizam, Ian. Really appreciate you coming out. Thank you.